Hello, hello, hello. Jordan Chariton live with Zayna Day, Friday, January 20th, the year 2022. Colin is in flight, so I am handling the live stream. That might be a good thing. Maybe not. Have some, probably have some tech hiccups, particularly since we're trying to take callers at some point. So should be interesting. What's up, Zayna?
How's it going? Going well for me.
Good. Yes, I was running errands all day and then took my dog to the vet and then tried to take care of my baby a little bit. So little impromptu, but we have quite a lot to discuss. Let me wait till more people trickle in. Smash that like button. Share this live stream, the like button under the video. So please press that like button. It helps get around YouTube's algorithm. Share the stream. That's also appreciated. And comment. We want a lively chat. We're going to be talking about a really important story that we are putting our money where our mouth is, because we are sending Tina with Colin this weekend to the Atlanta, Georgia area to cover what they're calling the Cop City demonstrations, which have been going on for basically since 2021. So we're talking well over a year now, in a public forest in Atlanta County, which is kind of it's straddled, I guess, between Atlanta and DeKalb County. And this forest area, the police, because they don't have enough space in this country, want to build a 85-acre, $90 million police training center so that they have ample room. By the way, that's the size of 64 football fields. Let me repeat, 64 football fields. They want to build a $90 million police training center so they have space for explosives training, ammunition, a mock city, and areas that they could enough space so they could burn things. So basically a burn center, an explosives area, build a mock city. They also want in this mock city a helipad for police helicopters to land.
For Black Hawk helicopters. So it's military-sized helipad, which is insane.
And shockingly, it's being dumped right on top of a black and brown neighborhood, where I believe 70 or so % of the neighborhood that surrounds this forest is black people who basically have no say in the matter. And there's so many factors here. This story is not one thing. There's racism. There's corporate greed. We'll get into the corporations involved. There is environmental problems because they're cutting down much of the forest if this center goes through. That's why protesters have been camped out atop their trees, building tree houses to protest for over a year.
One of the only urban parks or forest areas left of that size in Atlanta, when there used to be several. They've all been industrialized, and this is one of the very last ones, if not the last one left in the city.
Right. So environmental genocide. Also, the water is contaminated around where they're building this. The EPA many years ago mandated that they clean up the water for the area that white people live. Didn't mandate for the area where black people live. It's just a gigantic mess. It goes to, essentially the police state we live in. And let's be clear. Zayna, did you hear about any of this in the Georgia election between Raphael Warnock and I'm already forgetting his name. What was the football player's name? Walker. What was his name?
I did, only because I know the organizers and helped organize a panel, before the elections that we actually conducted early in December. But I will say in helping, my friend Renee Johnston with the panel, I did not see news coverage. There was no news coverage anywhere. In fact, Status Quo was the first I saw ever cover Cop City. No one was talking about it before the elections. I did not hear, I was trying to find clips of candidates talking about it, before this panel, and just to share out as was trying to help get the word out for organizers, and nothing, not a breath from either candidate running.
So basically, you have, I won't compare it to Standing Rock. It's a little different, but the idea, I think, is very similar. You have essentially a product of the state, a vessel of the state. In Standing Rock's case, it was a pipeline. In this case, it's a totally unnecessary mega police academy that is being basically dumped on the most vulnerable among us. It is going to cut down the last remaining, like you said, indigenous forest in Atlanta. It's 85 acres. It's already they have surrounding areas for police, but they want to plop this mega center right in the middle of this neighborhood. And essentially there is very little the residents that actually live there can do about it. Let me just read. There's a lot to show you.
Oh, and Jordan, one other thing, and it's enough that it's happening in Atlanta to be, for us as a country to be concerned. But this is also potentially a model that is being shared with other cities and other states in order to replicate this across the country. So
Absolutely.
This is starting, we can think of it as starting in Atlanta. This is the first front lines of this type of institution, police institution, and militarization to this scale.
Absolutely. And remember to smash that like button, share this live stream. Tina and Colin get there tonight very late. Tomorrow there will be a protest march, and it's kind of a fluid situation, as we're going to get into in a little bit. A protester was killed on Wednesday, shot and killed by police. The rest of the media have been dutifully regurgitating whatever the police tell them happened. Of course, the police are saying they were shot at and as a result had to shoot and kill the protester. I have reason to think that's bullshit. We'll get into that in a minute. I just want to get into the money, because always follow the money. Major corporations and institutions are helping to build, quote, Cop City in Atlanta. Police foundations act as a back channel for corporate and wealthy interests by adding to already overinflated budgets. This is from Truth Out. In 2021, let me just, Colin's not with me, so bear with us. In 2021, Little Sis and Color of Change profiled 1,400 corporate connections to 22 major police foundations across the United States. These connections spanned every industry, including telecommunications, real estate, finance, big tech, and oil and gas, as well as universities, sports franchises, and cultural institutions. Despite the U.S. spending upwards of $100 billion on policing each year, police foundations act as a back channel for corporate and wealthy interests by funding police even further. Adding to already overinflated budgets without any required public oversight, approval, or accountability. These foundations fundraise millions each year with little transparency and provide a slush fund for the police. The funding contributes to police militarization through the purchase of weapons, body armor, and controversial surveillance technology, such as predictive policing software. There's no clearer example of this relationship than in Atlanta, where the Police Foundation pledged to raise $60 million for a proposed Cop City, a police training facility that would be built on 85 acres of protected forest land. The training facility will feature a mock village, an emergency vehicle driving course, firing range, and an area for explosives training. And as Zaina pointed out, a helipad for, what was the type of chopper?
Blackhawks. So
Yes.
Military grade choppers.
Yes. However, while the Atlanta Police Foundation is footing much of the bill, Atlantans would be forced to pay an additional $30 million for the facility, despite wide-reaching and vocal community opposition. I'll tell you what, the Herschel Walker Raphael Warnock race was largely nationalized. I didn't hear shit about this. I mean, you did, because you were talking to the activists, but the debate, which people watch nationally between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker, fundraising emails, policy proposals by Raphael Warnock. I didn't hear anything about this because they both are probably for it. I mean, I didn't have time before we went to air. I planned on reaching out to Warnock and Ossoff's people to see their positions. I'm sure they're for it because the Democrats are basically have moved to the right in terms of, the crime problem and moving back to the 1980s in terms of, the problem with crime, and we need more police and more weapons and all
Well,
this.
Warnock has stated all of that, stated the war on crime in Atlanta.
Right.
So, and stated the support of the growth of heavy growth of the police complex in Atlanta itself. So in Atlanta and Georgia as a whole. So he has already been speaking in support, if not in support of this particular project, in support of growing police in Georgia overall.
Absolutely. Let me read a little bit more on the funding here. 1 second. The push for Cop City from the corporate-backed Atlanta Police Foundation comes on the heels of Operation Shield, a 2017 effort to develop a network of nearly 11,000 surveillance cameras and license plate readers across Atlanta. The project made Atlanta the most heavily surveilled city in the U.S. The post highlights Atlanta Police Foundation's corporate backers and directors, many of whom have made statements of pledges supporting Black and brown communities in the wake of George Floyd's murder in 2020. Yet these same corporate actors are now leveraging their influence and capital to push forward the Cop City development, which will invariably harm those communities through the further militarization of police. And here's a little diagram of corporations that are backing the Atlanta Police Foundation. That is the Atlanta Police Foundation are heavy duty on behind Cop City. Shockingly, Amazon, one of the biggest surveillors out there. Chick-fil-A, if you recall.
Look, Delta.
Yeah.
Wells Fargo, always.
Home Depot, who the head of Home Depot is a big MAGA guy. Waffle House is big down south. JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, who always have Black Lives Matter kind of sloganeering, but disproportionately screw Black and brown people on mortgages, on interest rates, and propping up the police. So I'll put this in the super chat if you want any more info on the corporations behind us. I want to get to, I'm going to give an overview of what Cop City is. Al Jazeera, AJ Plus did a really good thing, good video last year. But first, I want to get to the immediate, which is part of why we're going this weekend. Again, we're going this weekend. Tina, Colin will be on the ground. It's frankly a bit of a dangerous time, I would say, Zaina, for protesters as well as journalists. They've been arresting journalists who are covering this. This protest is happening in a forest, and the police are saying it's on private property. That's under dispute because it is technically public land. But the police are basically trying to clear out all the protesters logistically, which we'll show you in a minute. That includes protesters who are camped out atop tree houses. They have built basically homes for themselves at the top of the trees, camping out there so that the trees cannot be cut down as part of the construction, because they need to cut down a large swath of the forest, which is obviously environmentally very bad, to build this site. So the protesters and forest defenders have basically been risking and sacrificing their own bodies and lives to prevent the trees from being cut down. This has created, I guess you could say, a little mock protest village to stop this. And one of those protesters was killed on Wednesday. I believe the police killed this protester and are then trying to push the narrative that this protester shot at them, which they know that the media will dutifully regurgitate as a cover, as a pretense to clear out all of the protesters. And we saw some of that at Standing Rock, where the police said Standing Rock protesters were tossing things at police or starting fires, where in many cases they were not. But police pushed this in large part propaganda. Of course, the media just reported it as is. This helped create a narrative that if you are just an average person listening to it, are saying, well, they're attacking police, so the police have a right to defend themselves, and on we go. But I want to play this from Democracy Now! This morning. They had on an activist, but they also got audio from a forest defender. The forest defender was anonymous for, obvious reasons to protect themselves. But a forest defender who was there when the police shot and killed this protester. The protester's name was Manuel Teran. He went by the name Tortuguita. Apologies if I mispronounce. He was a beloved activist. They've had vigils for him. I believe they're having a vigil, for them, went by them. They're having a vigil for them tonight. Tortuguita, again, was this activist and forest defender's name. Let me play this from Democracy Now! This, again, is an anonymous forest defender who explained what they saw and heard as police shot and killed Tortuguita.
On Wednesday.
Jordan, we can't hear the audio for some reason.
You don't hear the audio?
No, you could try muting yours as well, and then try playing it. Maybe that's. Still unable to hear the audio. And you're muted now as well. I can try pulling it up myself. Jordan, you're muted. We can't hear you either.
You could hear me, right?
I can now.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What I was saying, Colin's not here. For some reason, that line is not working at the moment, but fortunately, all the rest of the clips I have to show are preloaded, so you'll be able to hear those. But what that forest defender was saying was all of a sudden they heard not like one shot, but like rapid fire shots. So obviously that would kind of counter the idea that, this protester shot at them, because all of a sudden people just heard rapid fire shots over and over again. The other thing is Tortuguita was the protester they killed, was in a tent. So you'd have to believe this Tortuguita had like a sniper aim and shot through a tent at 6 or 7 agencies that were in there. They were in there at the time doing a clearing operation, as they called it, i.e. a sweep to get rid of all the protesters. So, obviously you should be extremely skeptical anytime you hear police accounts, particularly, media that just says the police say. We don't know exactly what happened. I believe there's serious reason to doubt that a activist who, by all accounts, was very peaceful, gentle, just shot through a tent at police with no provocation. I think police went in there. It obviously would help the police in their mission to clear out all the protesters, to paint them as domestic terrorists, which Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, is calling them domestic terrorists. It would help them significantly if they could just brand them as, they're shooting at police, tossing Molotov cocktails. I could tell you when I was at Standing Rock, there was some cases where water protectors were aggressive or started fires. That was the exception to the rule. That wasn't a common thing. It was usually a lot of times police started fires and then painted it on protesters. So I don't know exactly what happened, but the protesters are contesting the police account. They're calling for an independent investigation. as of now, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations is who would investigate it. They're the ones that killed this protester. So if that'll tell you something. I want to play a clip from our show yesterday. Ron and Tina had Matthew on. He's an activist. This one should work because I preloaded it. But he called it straight up murder. What happened? Let's take a look.
It was a murder. And I think that the first thing that we should note is we're dealing with people that labeled protesters terrorists while they were sitting in trees, literally minding their business. And they were pepper sprayed, had pepper balls fired at them, had rubber bullets fired at them, and did not respond whatsoever. Yet they were still labeled terrorists. So we are led to believe that it's quite likely that the claim that an officer was fired at first is specious.
So what do you think about this, Zaina? I mean, you've been involved in activism, protests. I'm not saying, I'm not saying all police are awful, but I have a very hard time believing this this demonstration has been going on for over a year. There's been no protesters shooting at police. And all of a sudden, you're starting to hear the narrative and see the narrative, which the media is pushing, that these are domestic terrorists. And all of a sudden, one day, oh, a protester shot at police. We need to clear the whole thing out. This is environmental terrorism, which is what they were calling the Standing Rock protesters. I don't buy it.
Well, just to clarify who that was Matthew Johnson, from an interim executive director of Beloved Commune, who's been helping to organize. Their organizers have been there almost a year. So Matthew has been in and out for months, so is very familiar with what has been happening in Atlanta on the ground. And I will say that it was, how many? I'm trying to find that number here. I believe it was 5 to 7 protesters were arrested in mid-December. Five demonstrators were arrested in mid-December with charges of domestic terrorism. So they were already starting to ramp things up. And that's right around the time that the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI started showing up and arresting people for domestic terrorism in mid-December. My assumption, and this is just an assumption, alarm bells went out to get people out of the trees so that they can start construction in the spring. And so they're ramping up how to handle protesters, which we've seen historically in the past from how things ramped up, as you mentioned, at Standing Rock. But historically in protest on the ground, whether it be pipeline protest, reclamation protest, and other environmental protest, if you're on the ground where commercial construction is going to happen, all of a sudden the charges start to amp up on protesters as well as journalists covering these protests. For me, the fact that there has been no footage that is body cam footage that is surfaced from the police department, if it was self-defense, wouldn't the police department want to get that footage out immediately? Typically when it is, they don't, they don't wait on that. Their PR teams scramble and they get the footage out as soon as possible to show, to curb any benefit of the doubt toward the police. But that's not happening in this instance. So my curiosity is, what is that body cam footage showing? Secondly, no, I mean, I don't trust police to investigate themselves ever. So the fact that there is no internal investigation as of yet, and all that we're hearing is that it was self-defense. There is no body cam footage. There is no robust description of what happened from the police. All of that's very concerning right now. And knowing what, I've been hearing on the ground, reports coming in daily since I've been following this since back in October, is that things have been gradually heating up more and more and more for the protesters, with more fortification outside of the forest and encroaching in on the protesters every day.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that it's reached a boil over point.
Absolutely. There's also a really, really terrible history on this property. Up until 1995, this used to be a prison farm where, I mean, there was poor sanitation, poor nutrition, overcrowding. Before that, it was a plantation that enslaved as many as 20 people. So besides the fact that today it's trying to plop down I mean, militarized police commando center right next to a black community. It also has the history as a prison farm with forced labor, a plantation, and there is environmental genocide that has gone on here. Let me play this other clip from Matthew. He was on with Tina and Ron yesterday talking about how the water around this forest has been contaminated with arsenic. Wait till you see what the EPA's reaction to that was. This is just America. Let's take a look.
Hold on to your hats. This land has had no rest from wicked, and God knows how long. Maybe this past 30 years or so has been the freest that it's been. But let's also keep in mind that the only reason that they shut down the prison farm is because the water surrounding it was so poisoned they kept ending up with dead prisoners because of arsenic in the water, right? So there's like also a long history of like poisoned water along the South River Forest. And whenever it rains more than 1/10 of an inch around where they're building Cop City, sewage floods into it. Now, okay, and I'm getting a little bit far afield, but I think this is very important stuff.
Yeah.
Now the county has been mandated by EPA regulations to clean up the water supply in DeKalb County because it's so bad. However, there is a caveat in which they aren't mandated to clean up in the South Side, where it's about 80% Black residents. This is the EPA, and this was supported in courts, right? That this qualifier, that they didn't have to clean up the water right here because it wasn't worth the money. So when we're looking at Flint, Michigan, when we're looking at Jackson, Mississippi, this is how this happened systematically. And so there are so many people that have been coming in towards this movement because it just hits on so many levels. Now you're considering paving all this place where you used to have water runoff. Now we're at 1/10 of an inch. What does that mean for how little of a drizzle it will take now before you have more flooding of sewage into the water supply, right? They're taking away all the wetlands that are making at least somewhat potable at this point.
Yeah.
It's not surprising. A lot of people, by the way, thought the EPA suddenly became, a sinister department under Trump. The EPA was always bad. And the EPA, like the CDC, it's not meant for environmental protection as much as it's meant for protecting capitalism. Sure, there's plenty of good people at the EPA who genuinely care about the air, the water, animals, you name it. But the EPA has its own history of racism, cover-ups, and selective enforcement, shall we say.
It operates as a scapegoat for larger corporations and especially with toxic environmentalism, toxic environments in poor Black and brown communities in Appalachia, places where folks don't have enough money to buy the high dollar lawyers. It's hard for them to get the EPA to do anything in listening at all when the companies are the ones who are putting on the pressure.
Absolutely. By the way, our poll, not a brilliant question. Are the cops lying? 91% think the cops are lying. I would love to talk to the 9% who say no, the cops are telling the truth. So yeah, and it's serious business down there. I mean, Tina, who's going to be on the ground. And by the way, super chats are appreciated. As always, it costs money to send reporters on the ground. As far as I know, Zaina, correct me if I'm wrong, I have not seen CNN covering this, MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times, AP, Daily Beast, Young Turks.
They haven't been on the ground talking to the people impacted. What they have covered. The first time they covered it was the police officer. The murder of the protester in the forest, and that's the only thing that they covered. They're not covering the environmental impacts. They're not on the ground interviewing protesters. They didn't cover the vigils or go on the ground for the vigils for the protest. Previously, these are the first mainstream news articles I'm seeing about it, and it's all centered around the police narrative. Yep. So, status quo, as far as I know, is going to be the first on the ground actually talking to protesters and getting, information from them about what's happening there.
Yeah, I want to give credit. I tried playing the video, but the audio wasn't working, and Colin is flying right now. He usually handles the tech. Al Jazeera was down there, I think, at some point last year. So they did some reporting down there. But that's about it. I mean, maybe some local Atlanta outfits, but I'm guarantee you, based on my experience, the local media in that area in Georgia has been doing stenography for the police. And, this is
11. I'll give them credit because I saw some articles from them digging into the corruption and digging into the environmental impacts. And that's a local news station. And I was actually surprised to see that. So kudos to their investigative journalist for actually doing work outside of the broadcast conglomerate. But again, not many people have been on the ground talking to the protesters themselves. So we're hoping to be able to get down there to talk to some of the organizers about what's been going on the last year, and what the status of where everything is. There was a tremendous amount of pushback prior to the financing being approved. More than 18 hours of deliberations at the city council, as well as people flooding in from neighborhoods by the dozens, sometimes hundreds, into the city council to protest this, the building of Cop City, because not only does it have the environmental impacts, the socioeconomic impacts, the police militarization impacts, it's also being built on indigenous protected lands.
Right. Yeah. And it's also, and thanks for the super chat. Be safe, Tina. Hold on. Oh, be safe, Tina and team. Stop Cop City. Appreciate it, Joanne. Keep those super chats coming. It's also goes to a much bigger thing than just this story in Atlanta. Obviously, we're going down to cover this. We think it's important. But this goes to the whole capitalist in bed with the government to push this idea of eco-terrorism and domestic terrorism. You hear a lot of talk from certain leftists about free speech and censorship and, the threat of big tech and all those things are valid. I don't really hear them talking much about the actual threat to freedom of protest. Is there any bigger speech in this country than the right to protest? To what's the phrase? I don't know the proper phrase, but air grievances to your government peacefully. That is one of the most quintessential forms of free speech. And we have seen it under attack, not just through environmental protests, but police brutality protests, climate protests, healthcare protests, you name it. Yeah, they'll let you protest for a day. But if you get a little unruly or you chain yourself to equipment that's going to slow down, production, whether it's fossil fuel pipelines or giant police commando centers or you name it, all of a sudden you're an eco-terrorist or you're a domestic terrorist. All of a sudden you are branded as inciting a riot. We saw that at Standing Rock. We've seen that with protests against Keystone Pipeline. We're seeing it now that you are inciting riots. We have seen governors, Ron DeSantis, who the media is, manufacturing as the more palatable version of Donald Trump. They tried to pass a law in Florida that would make it legal for anybody to drive over protesters, to literally run them over, and that be legal.
Also promoted the stand your ground law when it came to protest. It was a speech 2.5 months ago. Ron DeSantis hinted at, stand the ground law and what that, stand your ground law if these protesters get too crazy, basically, right, is what he said. So, I mean, that's terrifying, especially running people over after what happened in Charleston. And I can't help but think about how things ramped up here in Atlanta, because we talked about the surveillance, the 11,000 cameras, right? The most surveilled city in the country. Talked about the increases in the police state budget. The Atlanta Police Foundation, the 25 million from all the different corporations, which we can see with potential ties to all of this industry that's being built around policing Atlanta. And now we've ramped up to essentially an entire 75-acre city being built in Atlanta with helipads, Black Hawk helicopters, tanks potentially. So it's not surprising that they've also ramped up their response to the protesters and wanting to really strike fear in people to keep them from continuing to protest this or slowing this down in any kind of way, because it's ever since, the cameras, all of that's tied together. It's all part of a package when these types of changes are considered. And it's scary to think about the impacts on the people of Atlanta economically, on their freedoms in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And hold on, I'm doing a little hosting and tech stuff. Yeah, and like I just put on the screen, any amount can really help. We're sending Tina and Colin. They will be live from a protest tomorrow. I think it's a march tomorrow against Cop City. They'll be interviewing likely protesters, community members that are affected. Because remember, it's not just the protesters there. It's a community that's about 70% African-American, where they're putting this police training center. And trust me, the majority of them do not want it. And we're not consulted. That was one of the clips I was going to play for you, but for some reason the audio wasn't working. So there's a lot of stakeholders here. Obviously, you have the earth. They're cutting down a significant portion of the forest to build an 85, well, the 85 acres is already there, but to build a very environmentally toxic military police training center, which will have an area for burning things. I'm sure the Black Hawk that's going to be coming, landing there constantly. The Black Hawk helicopters are not so kind for the environment. We know that there's been plenty of environmental and water contamination with other military bases around the country. That's something that doesn't get covered a lot, particularly firefighter foam that has contaminated waterways near military bases around the country. This would be the biggest police training center, whatever they want to call it, in the United States. Also, I don't have a ton of information on this, but I do know that this Atlanta Police Training Center, there are plans for collaboration with the Israeli. What do they call the Israeli police? The IDF. The yes. Israeli IDF. So it's not just domestic. There's international plans for this police training center to collaborate with Israel. So whatever way you slice it, this is bad. And somebody asked, I think it was Tony. Let me get to your super chat. Yeah. Hi, guys. Is there any reason for Cop City at all? It seems like a military base for cops. They have landing pad for Black Hawk helicopters. No, not that I know of. You could probably solve the crime problem in Atlanta a lot more effectively by, I don't know, investing in jobs, labor, raising the minimum wage, jobs guarantee, some type of UBI, higher taxes on wealthy fucks. I mean, we could go down the list, Sana.
Not to mention that in several countries, and this is something I used to go to Eastern Kentucky University, and there they train FBI, police, firemen. They have a larger complex there. But one thing that the university has always pushed, as well as the professors that work in the department, is longer term training for police officers. They're building this massive complex when in actuality, police are pushed through what, a 6-month training program often before they even hit the streets. So it's not like substantial training is happening. And building, and it is what they're building to respond to. They're building essentially a mock city to, help prevent against terrorism, to respond to protest, and to respond to riots, which to me gives me a very, very fascist vibe. When you're talking about, bringing in we think about back to the Black Lives Matter protests, and they were in Columbus, Ohio, for instance, tanks were brought in, rolling tanks down the street. There was heavy militarization of our police in response to the Black Lives Matter protest. It almost feels like Cop City, and this is an assumption, is a response to the increased tensions in this country because of economic pressures, because of racism, because of the holdovers of colonialism. And the reason for Cop City would be to maintain more control of the population, not to prepare police to handle situations better. Otherwise, you don't need a sprawling 75-acre complex for that.
Well, one of the things, I apologize, I tried to play the Democracy Now! Clip, but for some reason the audio wasn't working. But Kamau Franklin, who's an activist down in Atlanta, he was saying that he believes that the police, these police training centers, because there was one proposed, I remember a couple years ago in Chicago, are a response to the George Floyd protests, Black Lives Matter, police brutality protests in general, defund the police movement. As a counter to that, to try and just squash any movement building, organizing around police. Obviously, let's keep it real. The George Floyd protests, they were a beautiful thing, but in reality, it has not led to policy changes. It's only led to more money for police. Biden gave $32 billion more to police in his 2022 budget. We know that the Democrats in the midterms, because they have no core policy other than lying to Black people for their votes, they just move further to the right because they are a bunch of wusses and cower to the right-wing messaging that Democrats are soft on crime. So they're all together in bed with let's shower the police with more money. But we just had Zaina. Can you have a bigger example of why just throwing money at police, whether it's a training center or in the case of Uvalde, its own police unit for the school district, is not what we should be doing? Listen, there's been times in my life, I'm a white person, so I have privilege and the good fortune where I've been in a tricky spot, called the police. They came in a jiffy and were very nice to me. That's the experience for most white people, not for Black, brown, indigenous, and the poorer white folks. But there's no need for an 85-acre police commando center with Black Hawk helicopters, state-of-the-art firing ranges. There's no need for it. And can you imagine for a second, and again, I apologize, Colin's flying, so I can't play this video. Can you imagine just being a community member there? Because the video that Al Jazeera Plus did when they reported there shows one of the community members there. And the dogs are frightened all day before this center is put in, because they hear firing going on at the ammunition range. They're going to quadruple that ammunition range. If you want to
send me the link, Jordan, I can try to play it.
Oh, yeah, that would be good.
On my end. And while you're pulling that, I'll pull up this comment. My biggest concern is only the first is that this is only the first one, right? If they are successful, we are going to see these cop bases spring up across the country. Jen Poilette, I agree, Jen. Thank you for the $9.99 super chat as well. Organizers who are protesting Cop City have been very clear that it's talk has sprung up. Other cities have visited. This model is being sent around not only across the state in Georgia, but to other states in the country, all the way from Los Angeles, California, Louisville, Kentucky, Nashville, Tennessee. So larger cities are looking at this complex as a possibility, as a model to yes, seed this across the country.
Right. And by the way, I mean, not to go too off the topic, look at the investments the U.S. make. It's either giving money to Ukraine or giving money to police here. There doesn't seem to be anything in the middle. The investments are made for weapons for other countries. Whatever you think of Ukraine, I mean, I'm for humanitarian aid. I mean, I think it's terrible what's happening there. But we're spending a shit ton of money as far as Ukraine and propping up that war, or $90 million in the U.S. Somebody said I missed a super chat. I didn't. Oh, here we go. Christine, Jordan, why does RBN say you have a white savior complex? You are literally only YouTuber who shows up to report news in person. What is wrong with these leftists? Oh boy, I don't think I have 3 hours. I don't know. I wish I could tell you. I don't really know what their psychological degrees are over there to know what kind of complex I have. All I can tell you is, in my view, how I live my life, I don't know about you, Zaina, is actions speak louder than words. If people really think that I've gone to Flint nearly 20 times and that we cover the stories that we cover for some like narcissistic savior complex, I mean, they're free to think that, but I don't do this. I don't cover the stories I cover based on like trying to be a white person rescuing anyone. I just care. I mean, I know that might sound simplistic, but I don't know. I think whether you're white, black, glow in the dark, it doesn't really matter. If you see injustice, you should care. And I have been both fortunate, but also unfortunate to be able to travel and see how bad things really are. And in Flint in particular, it's always outraged me that the media reports this as it's fixed, it's over, the water's fine, yada, yada. It just gets swept under the rug, while people are still to this day having body rashes from showering in that water. People still to this day are developing cancers, autoimmune problems, Parkinson's, epilepsy, liver failure, kidney disease. That's not about like, I'm not stupid enough to think I could save Flint. I mean, that's not what this is about. This is about trying to actually get these stories out there, keep them in the news, and kind of counter the collective corporate media push to cover up these stories. So, yeah,
the biggest thing, Jordan, is the white savior complex does happen, and there are lots of news hosts that do this shit, and people of color like myself, we see it and we know it, and it drives us crazy. But the most important thing is actually hearing and centering the voices of those harmed and putting yourself second, like the getting the stories out there. And so I appreciated it when, Status Quo was on the ground for Flint, or when Status Quo was in Philadelphia, covering the housing issues there, when they were down in Jackson, Mississippi, talking to people and putting those people in front of the cameras, as well as bringing impacted communities on, hosts from those impacted communities, voices from those impacted communities, and uplifting the stories, like going to Cop City to share the story from the organizers' perspective and the community members that are impacted. That's the most important thing, is to let their voices and their stories lead. And who are the quote unquote saviors are all of ourselves who get behind each other and stand up and fight for something better. That's really what it's all about. That's why RBN is going, I'm sorry, Status Quo is going on the ground right now to stop Cop City, is because this is an important story. This, and their voices aren't being told. So it's about passing the microphone. As I always used to say when I was an organizer, pass the bullhorn. Status Quo says pass the microphone. But that's really important. And you get into white savior complex, narratives when it's somebody that's saving the day. But sharing the stories of the people that are doing the work on the ground, the people that are doing behind the scenes, getting the actions and organizing out there so that people can give, people can participate, so that those stories are shared and they get noticed so that something is done about them, is very, very critically important. And there's not very many news organizations out there that actually do that and actually bring the voices of those people to the forefront.
Yeah, I think also just in general on YouTube, to me, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not getting it. I don't really get the point. I don't know if you do, Zay. I don't get the point. And like, so what would you prefer? Even if you like think my motives are nefarious, would you prefer us not go to these places? Like, I don't get the point of the criticism, because regardless of if you think I'm doing this for the wrong reasons, which I've already stated why I do this, like, do you see a lot of other outlets covering the stories we're covering? I don't mean that like arrogantly. It's just a fact. I mean, there's not a lot of outlets that actually leave the studio, get in the trenches and cover these types of stories, partially because as Zaina and I are working on behind the scenes, it's incredibly expensive to do this kind of reporting. I mean, we're thinking of sending Lewis to the border. Between him and a translator, it would cost us like $800 to $900 a day to cover what's going on at the border. So I don't really get outfits that are trying to tear down like one of the few outlets that go out there and not just Flint, but I mean, cover economic exploitation, environmental genocide, police brutality. I mean, hey, we're all public figures. So if you want to, we're all open to criticism, but yeah, I would find that criticism, Zaina, to be valid if like all our content was mini docs, extolling myself and showing the story through me. But I'd say most of our content when we're on the ground is us interviewing activists, residents, community members. We're not first interviewing politicians or CEOs. We're trying to put the spotlight on residents. And another thing I'll say, you guys see half of it. And, whether it's RBN or others that want to criticize, you only see half of it. You don't see me, Tina, Lewis on the phone with activists, on the phone with sources. I was just on the phone with, I won't get into it, but somebody who lost her sister and trying to help her with resources and, guide her to get more attention on the story. Tyler Lewis, a 19-year-old Black student who was killed in Buffalo. I'm not live streaming my phone conversation with his mother for 45 minutes. I'm not saying that so you like think I'm great, but you guys only see like the stories that are published, the videos. You don't see all the work that goes on to this behind the scenes. So trust me, I'm not doing this to be any type of savior. And I find it, whether it's RBN or others, people can say whatever they want, but I find it odd when leftists try and tear down like on the ground reporting on poverty, on oppression, on environmental genocide. If you want to tear me down personally, have at it. I don't care. But, you shouldn't be trying to tear down, good reporting that lifts these people's voices. Because at the end of the day, I thought that's why everybody's in this. I mean, everybody's focused on different things, whether it's foreign policy, domestic, whatever. But I thought the goal of independent media was to counter the corporate echo chamber, but also to give a voice to people who will never have a voice on CNN, will not be quoted in the New York Times. I mean, that's what we built and started Status Quo on, to give the microphone back to the people. So yeah, we'll continue doing that. But people keep asking me about RBN and others. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if people want to do videos on me 7 times a day, have at it. I mean, it's clear why they're doing it.
Well, they have the right to their opinion, you know,
Yeah.
and whatever they feel like is important for them to write about. You know, they are one of the few Black owned and Black ran media outlets out there that's independent. So a lot of people respect that. And I respect that. And I would like to see more coverage from them on the issues like they used to do. More of, I've watched them many times, and I have respect for some of the things that they used to do and some of the organizing.
Yeah, but
If
it's not
that's
just,
their
I'm
opinion,
not,
the way that I see it, let them have at it, you know. But just don't cancel each other or stop watching or whatever. See for yourself. See for yourself. Go and watch the media and see for yourself whatever the content is, and you decide. But we will be bringing more on the ground coverage in 2023. We are covering the immigration crisis. Nobody's talking about that right now. We are covering tabletop domestic issues that are impacting people's families and their homes. We recently covered, John Farina recently covered an apartment that was out of heat for, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas, that didn't have their gas was turned off in New York City. So these kinds of stories, Status Quo will continue to cover, and I think that that's important. We'll continue. We have Kim Brown, for instance, comes on Wednesday nights at 7, or Wednesday evenings at 5, and she often talks about colonialism, the police military industrial complex. She's the one who interviewed Tyler's mom from the school shooting in New York, or the school stabbing in New York, that the campus police are investigating, and got that story out. So I say pay attention to the content, pay attention to the stories. The other people are dying.
yeah.
People are dying. They're suffering. You know, I've been in poverty my entire life. That's why I'm doing this work now as a journalist and an activist as well, is so that things can be better for my family and my daughter doesn't have the issues that we had. So let's stick to the stories and the content and exposing the corruption and the corporations of America, and you know, let's stick to that.
what I was going to say, and then we're going to start taking callers. So write down the number.
We also have one more super chat, and I did pull
Okay.
up that video if you want to show it real quick before we hop
Oh,
on the
yeah.
call.
What I was going to say is, to me, at the end of the day, like, I started this in 2016 when I was at the Young Turks, this reporting on the ground and covering these stories. And there was a lot less channels back then yapping at each other. So it's kind of a new age. Now there's like a lot more channels, and there's a lot more channels that I'm not specifically talking about RBN. I just mean the whole independent left ecosystem. There's just a lot of, to me, distractions, and a lot of just this endless hamster wheel of people fighting on Twitter and YouTube and beefing with channels, and I'm the real left and they're the fake left and this and that. I don't really give a shit. Like Zaina and I said, it's a free internet if you want to criticize us or you know, make caricatures of us. But in my view, I'm proud of what we do at Status Quo. I'm proud of what I've done over the years. I know the reasons I do it. Trust me, I don't drive 9 hours back and forth to Flint as a savior complex. And we don't do the work we do. If we wanted to make a lot of money, we would not be doing this. Zaina can tell you that for sure. And I can tell you that for sure. And at the end of the day, I just tell you as the audience, try not to get distracted by hosts or channels that are just, most of what they cover is just beefing on people and trying to tear people down, because that's not going to get us anywhere. And frankly, I don't know, that just does the work of the establishment. The establishment would when I say establishment, I'm talking about the Democratic and GOP establishment and corporate establishment. They would much rather the left be cannibalizing and eating each other because it takes our eyes off of them. So I'm going to focus on them. Let me see if I missed any super chats.
I can't play it, Jordan, because I don't have my office set up yet. Just so you guys know,
Okay.
I just recently moved. And so I don't have my two monitors set up. So it'll do the echo. But we do have, I can pull up that one super chat and then.
Karen,
You got it.
1999. Thanks for covering. It feels like they're getting ready to designate racially segregated areas as problematic as a pretense for violence against minorities. And so the fascists can gain ground faster. This is an important thing because I want people to understand. I think when people think about fascism or how the media reports on fascism, they're trying to make it seem like the only forms of fascism are these growing right-wing groups like Proud Boys or Oath Keepers or, the Three Percenters and, January 6th and this and that. And there's certainly fascistic things going on within the right. But there is also corporate fascism, which is the unison of the state and corporate America. And we've had that for a long time here in the United Corporations of America. I think Standing Rock was a clear case of fascism. That was police that we pay for, basically beating the living hell out of Native Americans and their environmental allies in protection of a oil pipeline and an oil company's profits. And now you have police terrorizing and killing peaceful demonstrators on behalf of themselves, the police. So yeah, fascists are gaining ground. And I think, I don't know what you think about this comment, Zaina.
And thanks, Karina Paxson Agape. Appreciate the 1999. We've already been there. I mean, this is what we've had for 200 years in all kinds of different iterations, all the way from slavery to the, the quelling of Reconstructionism to the emergence of the KKK, to segregated school systems and Jim Crow segregation, to the war on drugs, to break up union and labor organizing. This is just the newest iteration. We've always had the fascism. There's always been the police violence in the poor areas and in Black and brown communities. It's not seen as much in the suburbs. It's not seen as much in the upper middle class America, which, there used to be one. It was mostly white, but there used to be one. But this fascism has always existed. What does scare me is that, yes, I think that it's gaining to a point where there's all these other issues kind of culminating in a rapid pace because of social media. You have anti-LGBTQ hysteria. You now have a revisionism of the satanic panic all over again, heightened misogyny to the point that domestic violence has tripled in the last 7 years. Rape culture has expanded in the last 6 or 7 years with the Andrew Tates and others who are, pushing this red pill misogynistic rhetoric. You have anti-Black and brown legislation. You have immigration hysteria. So we have a lot of components that I believe, yes, are pushing in, but our neighborhoods have been segregated for a very long time. And there has been heightened fascism, from corporate fascism to political fascism in those areas for generations. I mean, since before the founding of this country.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Before we start taking calls, and hopefully this works because I'm handling the tech. Oh, hold on. Das Bo Slice, €5.99. Good to see more and more people in the status quo team. Does your daughter consider a career as a journalist? I think you're talking about Zaina's because my daughter's 10 weeks old. What about it, Zaina?
My daughter, she's very historically knowledgeable because she's been around me in politics since she's been tiny. I used to take her to when I was working with congressional candidates to the events. So she would go to organizing events. She's been to tons of marches and she's seen all the back end. As far as politics or journalism, I don't know, because she's seen it all and she's seen everything that went into it, the good and the bad and the ugly. She might choose a completely different career path. She's actually interested in art, believe it or not. And she's an amazing artist. So we'll see. At 12, she doesn't have to have her life figured out yet.
And also, some of the best art that I have enjoyed is political art and protest art. So There you go.
True.
Let me get rid of this. Before we take calls, which hopefully will work, remember, hey, on the ground reporting is expensive. We're not asking you to give us money so we could go to the casino. We're asking you to help us fund between Tina and Colin. That's 2 flights, 2 hotel rooms. Obviously, they need to get a rent-a-car when they're there. Food, if they do get arrested, a legal fund. So hopefully they don't get arrested. They are arresting journalists down there, though. So they are, getting down there and taking risks, because it is becoming increasingly tougher for journalists to cover stories, because police all over the country are saying to hell with the First Amendment, and they're arresting journalists first and asking questions later. So definitely, if you can support us, you could either become a member. That would help us greatly by signing up as a Status Coup member for $5 to $10 a month. That's statuscoup.com/join, statuscoup.com/join. If you're already a member, you could hold on. Statuscoup.com/join. As a member, you get great perks, including behind the scenes from on the ground trips. So statuscoup.com/join. Sign up for as low as $5 a month. You could also donate to this trip. That would be statuscoup.com/donate. And that is
links are in the chat. You guys help out if you can.
Yes.
We're trying to start out 2023 so that we can get as many people on the ground to get as many stories firsthand as we can.
Absolutely. And speaking of, next weekend is our big fundraising show, Saturday and Sunday. And that's from 12 to 3, noon to 3 Eastern next weekend, both Saturday and Sunday. We're going to have some big guests. So stay tuned for that. We'll be live to fundraise. All right. Let me put up the number. I hope this works. 222. All right. Take calls. All right. My shows. Host a show. Save and start. Web connection. Ready. Connect to show. Okay. Now we do that. All right. So technically this should work, Zeta. So
this is the one end I didn't know about. So
yes. So
I'm going to be no help.
So somebody call in. Oh, wait. Do we have a caller here? I think we have a caller. Let's see. Celeste. You there, Celeste? Hello, hello. Hello. You there, Celeste? Oh no. I knew it was good. I knew it would be too good to be true without Colin. Hold on. Talk. Hello, hello. Lewis, you there? Hello, hello. God damn it. Oh, is that somebody?
Jordan, say something and try muting. Hello, is anyone there? Okay, Jordan, unmute if you're talking to us.
Yes, collective fail. This is the problem when Colin is in flight.
Colin is pretty much a hero, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. So for some reason, it worked when we tested it earlier, but it's not working on here. So what are you going to do? but we'll take callers when Colin's back. Let me hang this up. So I couldn't get the audio to work, and I couldn't get the calls to work. However, on the bright side, we're going to have reporting this weekend, and we'll still read your super chats or just normal chats. So we'll read a couple chats. So if you were trying to call in, feel free to leave a comment, and we'll respond. But apologies for the tech interruptions. On the bright side, Colin recently moved up here, so when he's back, I'll have him come by and we'll test this out to make sure it'll work. But normally, he is handling it on the back end. We're not using the call-in app anymore because on the call-in app, if you're only listening from the call-in app, there's a tech problem. You could hear it on the show, but you won't be able to hear me on the actual call-in app. So that's why we're using this program. Zaina, what are your expectations for this weekend? Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen, but we know there's protests continuing for Cop City. There's a vigil being held tonight for the protester who was killed. His name, their name, excuse me, that was the pronoun, was Manuel Teran. They went by Tortuguita. So there's vigil tonight, protests tomorrow, and this might get bigger because honestly, remember at Standing Rock, the inciting incident that there was already protesters there, but really the inciting incident that made it an international story were those dogs biting at protesters. Amy Goodman was down there and got that footage of police dogs biting protesters. And then there was just thousands of people came in. Obviously, this is different, but a protester being killed is a big deal. So you might see even more people going down there. We just don't know. We were kind of playing around with possibly sending Louis or Tina there last week. But seeing what happened this week, I think even if thousands of people don't descend, this is the pivot point between whether the fascists will win. Because make no mistake, the media is regurgitating collectively what the police are saying, that, a protester shot at them, so they had to shoot back. They're providing no evidence of such, but the media is dutifully responding. They're calling these domestic terrorists, eco-terrorists. So if they get away with this and they're able to shut down the whole demonstration, which these protesters have a right to demonstrate, that's their First Amendment. Who the hell knows what's coming next? Because to be clear, this isn't the first place that they've tried to build a very, very expensive police training center. In Chicago, they tried to do this too. I covered it a few years ago.
Yes. And, we were already talking about, it was last week, we were talking about, Tina going down to Atlanta. And then the police killed somebody on Wednesday of this week. And it's abhorrent. And it's abhorrent how things are escalating. Pictures that, we have already seen shows, potentially huge, militaristic trucks parked outside of the forest, different police agencies where people, don't even know which agency they're looking at. Are they looking at state troopers? Are they looking at the FBI? Are they looking at the Department of Homeland Security? It is in that aspect somewhat akin to what is happening with what happened at Standing Rock. But a lot of the individuals who are protesting are also organizers from the indigenous communities who this land actually, that's their home turf. So one of the things that let's see, Ethan Osborne, hold on. Ethan says, let me know if you need a driver or a marshal. Are you in Atlanta, Ethan? Let us know. You can DM us through Status Coup, or you can send us an email at, is it Status Coup info? Info at statuscoup.com. Thank you. Let's see. I'm looking for any other super chats. I'm also nervous because Saturday, there is a all in black vigil at Atlanta Underground. So there's quite a few different protests that I've seen that are going on. So I feel like as the story trickles out, there will be more and more people that will come out in support, because the community itself that is around this forested area and a lot of the Atlanta community were against the development of this massive structure in the first place. This isn't something the public wanted.
Yeah.
And now a life has been taken. Now people are being arrested and charged with domestic terrorism. Journalists are being arrested. So it's let's see, Michael Reich, $20.
Flint still bathing in toxic water. That city should be abandoned. Yeah, I mean, I was actually, a lot of you know this, but I'm working on a book on the Flint water crisis, particularly the cover up. I actually got offered, I got an offer from a publisher earlier this week. I won't get into it completely, but I'm kind of weighing my options and still sending my manuscript out to other publishers and agents. Book writing, I'm on chapter 8. I'm probably going to have 15 chapters. I have shown select people, including Zaina. I would say, I don't know, Zaina, I would say a good 85 to 90% of what's in my book has never been out there before. So I'm hoping, Flint is my passion. I want to help get the truth out. It's almost a decade later and they still have contaminated water. I'm still talking to residents who tell me that their eyes burn in the shower, that water comes out brown, black, and in some cases blue. They do not have Medicare for all. To me, this was never just about Flint. It was always about what kind of country do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a country where the government either intentionally or unintentionally poisons its citizens, and then instead of, as best as possible, making them whole, covers it up and leaves them to slowly die? That's not the kind of country I want to live in. So yeah, Flint is always, I'm always working on something with Flint. You could ask my wife. I'm also working on a separate from the book and another investigative story on Flint that hopefully will be published soon. It's sitting with one outlet right now. But it's easy to say it should be abandoned, but home is a very important thing to people, wherever your roots are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that don't want to leave and shouldn't have.
It's expensive too. People always say move out of Appalachia. They're tearing down our mountains. Our water here is poisoned. And, there's coal dust there used to be coal dust in my classrooms when I was little. People had cancer all around me. It was a part of living in Appalachia with the coal runoff and the coal mining and the fracking, lots of pollution. People would say just move, but moving is expensive. And if you're a homeowner and there's environmental degradation like that, you can't just sell your home. For the people that are privileged enough to own a home or to buy a home, you can't just pick up and sell it. And a lot of these places are also, just like Flint, economically ravaged. So if you have a job making $15 an hour and you're barely making your rent, you don't have proper transportation, how are you going to pick up and move? So what really needs to happen, and thanks for the $20, but what really needs to happen is the government and this country has abandoned Flint, and that's what needs to change. Not them leaving their homes, not them abandoning, their communities, but communities need to come in to bolster Flint and to help. We need Medicare for all. We need housing as a human right. We need massive infrastructure spending across this country, because Flint isn't a unique story. It is to a certain extent because of the corruption, but we can see that corruption across the country in communities over and over again where pollution is concerned.
Yeah.
And people are literally being poisoned in so many poor pockets in this country.
I think what makes Flint a unique story, and why I've covered it perhaps more than other stories, is it's this perfect storm of everything wrong with America all in one bowl. It's a privatization scheme, which the media doesn't really report. that will be prominent in my book. You will know the full, never before told behind the scenes of who poisoned Flint and why. Most important, it's a privatization scheme. It's county first state government, not a sexy topic, but that's a big part of it. It's about racism. It's about the controlled demolition of the middle class, which is why this was allowed to happen in Flint. Remember, Flint back in the 50s and 60s was the envy of the rest of the country. It was the birth of General Motors. It was a middle class utopia. The rest of the country envied Flint, but through redlining, racism, white flight, racist rezoning laws, trade deals like NAFTA, it was like a controlled fucking machete that tore down Flint and Detroit and many other communities in the Rust Belt and elsewhere. So you got racism, corporate greed, government corruption, privatization, all into one thing. Pollution. And a willful decisions to allow people to drink toxic water when you knew it was toxic at that time. So that's part of
our president at the time covering it up.
Right.
Even the president of the United States. Other
communities certainly have environmental contamination, mining and fracking and coal in West Virginia and the coal. So it's not like Flint is the only place. It's just this was such an acute situation that's now become a chronic cover up. But yeah, on Flint, all I say is if my wife ever wants to come on, she'll tell you that sometimes she feels like I'm married to Flint more than her. I understand, because too many times, even in our, like literally, I'd say 6 months after we got married, I was working on an investigative piece that ended up being published in The Intercept. And it was literally requiring like Monday through Sunday, all day, digging through documents, talking to sources. And I wasn't very present because I was focused on that. Even on our honeymoon at one point, I was like, I got yelled at, and I should have for looking at Flint stuff. So yeah, I'm going to keep on working on Flint. Status Quo will continue working on Flint once my newborn is a little older. And, right now I'm not going out in the field. I'll probably go back to Flint. So yeah, and God willing, this book will be published, I hope by next year. And hopefully get a lot of distribution and get more awareness out to the cover up. M3, I don't know how to pronounce that, but $20 super sticker. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I think it's Michelle.
Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. We did
Gamer
that.
Here.
Feel free, Ethan, to email us, info@statusquo.com. Jordan, what's the title of your book? $4.99. Tentative. I want to call it Watergate, all caps on the water. But I've been told not to do that. So I want to call it Watergate, inside the Flint water cover up. But if that doesn't work, I might call it political poison, inside the Flint water cover up. So we'll see. Yeah, from what I hear, the book publisher usually decides, so it really doesn't matter exactly what I want. But I'd love Watergate, all caps on the water, because honestly, what the Flint water cover-up, to be clear, I don't want to trigger any baby boomers. It makes Watergate look like child's play. Watergate did not kill anyone, and if it didn't involve a president, it just would have been your, garden variety, sleazy political thing. Flint is a much bigger cover up than Watergate. Flintgate, maybe. I like Watergate because like that clicks with everybody, and I think it would make people be like, and you'd obviously get it if it said Watergate, all caps in the water with like the Flint water plant behind. But I've been told that that's wouldn't work. So we'll see. All right, Zaina, I don't want to keep you too long on a Friday night. Let's go through a couple PSAs. Please, pretty please. Make sure that you have every notification on for Status Quo. So when we're live from Georgia this weekend, you will know we're live. That starts with making sure you are have clicked on all notifications on this channel. So right next to the subscribe button, there's a little bell. Click the bell. Let me show you. Click that bell and make sure you have pressed all notifications. But that's step one, unfortunately. It doesn't matter if you've clicked all notifications if you don't have notifications on for your iPhone and Android. So go to your settings in your iPhone or your Android or whatever device you have under notifications, and make sure you have it enabled for YouTube, because you might have clicked all notifications, but you're not getting them because you have not allowed it on your phone. Also, subscribe to our Substack, because we are posting a lot on Substack, including when we're going live. So that's another way to get a notification that we're live. You know, we don't want to spend the money to send people on the ground to cover these stories, and you don't know when we're live. We're live on Twitch as well. So that's twitch.tv/statuscoup. What else? Our email list, that's statuscoup.com. Just go to statuscoup.com and you can click on our email list where you'll get an email. A lot of times when we're on the road, we'll send out an email. And yeah, anything you could do, as Ron Placone says, do the thing, y'all. Hey, Ron. Anything you can do. We kind of have kind of like a double objective with these trips. Obviously, the first objective is to cover the stories, but obviously it's expensive to do this kind of reporting. We're flying Tina across country. Colin, we're flying down there, flights, hotels, all that stuff. So if you could donate to offset the cost for this trip, please, any amount makes a difference. statuscoup.com/donate. The links are in the super chat as well as the description to this video. I'll drop it in one more time to the super chat. So any amount really helps, and you could donate now or this weekend. We appreciate it. To those who can sign up as a member, that's how we fund this, you know, for the long haul. So we have different levels.
And we appreciate all of the members that we have currently, as well as our Substack subscribers. So there you can either join, become, you know, a member through our website, which we're getting that connected so that you can automatically become a member, a paid member of our Substack as well. So that we have that coming soon. But also join, you can join through our website as well. And that way you can get notifications. And as I said, we're hoping to be able to connect that to our Substack so that when we'll have written pieces, investigative pieces coming through Substack as well. So we'll have video on YouTube, Rockfin, and written pieces on Substack. Hopefully, maybe some more in-depth investigative pieces. Jordan's out right now. So I don't see him. It might be just a little bit before he can dig into a really robust piece, but that is something we're hoping to do more of in the future as well.
Well, I'm not out. I'm working on a book, feeding a baby, doing some stuff on the back end for Status Coup. But I'm always working on some investigative stuff, so don't worry. And sometimes
and he's here every day, basically, with the baby in tow. So he's not exactly out, I wouldn't say. Not to mention hosting now again on Monday, Tuesdays, and occasionally on Fridays.
To be clear, we also need to give credit to Mrs. Chariton, who's not on the payroll of Status Coup, but she's part of the work product, because for me to be live and work on the book, and I mean, I literally spent 3 hours just sending a tweet around today. The tweet we posted on the Cop City, trying to get it more traction, and the fact that we're going there. You know, she needs to be with the baby and caring for the baby. Obviously, I'm doing what I can too, but all the hours I put into Status Coup, she's doing the heavy lifting. So kudos to my lovely, lovely wife. And she's the one who sent me some of the Cop City stuff originally. My wife says you never give me credit when she's sending me all these stories. So thank you to my wife. I hope this is credit earned. I think
raising a newborn and story hunting, that is pretty impressive. I got to give it to her. As someone who had a newborn at one point in time in my life, I can see how much work that is.
Yeah, it goes like this. I'll tell her, like, send me stuff. And then she starts sending me like 30 fucking stories. I'm like, yo, chill. Stop sending me stuff. So
That's awesome.
that's usually the thing. Zaina has also graced us. She'll be joining me in some live streams going forward. We're looking at the programming schedule because we're hoping to kind of expand where the live streams might go from 5 to 7 Eastern every night. So, 5 to 6. Ron, I already reported it. Jordan did not make a person by himself. No.
just to clarify.
Thank you, Ron, for that.
Thanks for your accuracy, Ron.
Yes. Humorous is okay. Humorous emailed me. He's okay. For some reason, YouTube tries to block him when he leaves super chats sometimes. So I told him, if YouTube gives you a problem leaving a super chat, go to statusquo.com/donate. Right there, you could see those are some of the guests we're having on next weekend for our mega marathon streams. Again, noon to 3 o'clock Eastern, Saturday and Sunday next week. Marianne Williamson, Frances Fisher, the wonderful actress. She's in a new film about Standing Rock. Amazon labor unions, Christian Smalls, Nina Turner, Stephen Donziger. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, we could get Michael Moore. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, we can get Ralph Nader. I am talking right now to Julian Assange's brother, who's in Australia. So obviously timing is tough trying to schedule an interview. So we got to have him on for a update on Julian. So our goal overall for the fundraiser next weekend is $15,000. We've already earned $750. So hopefully you can donate both to this trip coming up this weekend and overall to help fund our on-the-ground reporting. Thank you to the folks who have donated so far, getting us to 750. Hopefully, midnight is coming up. Let's get to 1,000 by midnight tonight.
And Jordan, everyone loves her, so I got to mention her. We're also bringing on Oleme Aloran. For those of you who are familiar with her, she's awesome. I love her, and the journalist Chuck Modi. For those lefties out there who may know and follow Chuck, so we will be bringing them on as well. I believe that it will actually be Kim Brown that's going to be chatting with Oleme Aloran, so that should be fun.
Yes, thank you for reminding me on those great guests that will be joining us. And Colin should be back, so we'll be able to take callers as well, since I fucked that up big time. So we'll have callers. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome next weekend. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Zaina. Reminder, we'll be live tomorrow. I don't know what time. I think the protest is at night. Like 5 or 6 o'clock. So we'll have a Substack piece to notify you when we'll be live tomorrow. They check our Twitter too for updates at Status Quo. And thanks so much for watching. Everybody take care. Henry, email me. I have to ask you something. Email me, Henry. And have a good night, everybody. Thanks, Dana.
Good night.